It's the final countdown for Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones contract extensions with the Indianapolis Colts. Will they get something done in the next 24 hours? Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the #1 sports podcast network around. Then today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of HorseshoeHuddle.com, and I'm joined, as always, by Jake Arthur, the boots on the ground at Round Table Sports. We're bringing it all back to the Indianapolis Colts this week. The NFL Combine is firmly in their rear view, and we're going to be looking at the Colts offense and the Colts defense, what we're kind of hearing, what the latest news is on a lot of things before the tag deadline starts off tomorrow at 4 p.m., Tuesday, 4 p.m., March 3rd. So we'll talk all about that, and then also look at some ways that the Colts can, again, create some more cap space this offseason, ways they can add more picks, and just other miscellaneous news about the NFL Combine week that happened, obviously, this last weekend. So starting off with segment one, Jake, I think the biggest conversation regarding the Colts is updates on Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones' potential contract extensions before the tag window at 4 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Now, there's a lot of negotiating going in through the press right now on both sides of all this, mainly with Daniel Jones' camp and the Indianapolis Colts. So I want you to give your kind of feel on the situation first, Jake, and then I'll kind of break it down from, I guess, just from talking with agents over the years and kind of how the vibe of all this typically goes in my mind. But I'll let you have the floor here first, Jake.
Yeah, on this episode of 24, what happens with the franchise and transition tags on these guys? No, it does seem to be some interesting last-minute discussions happening very publicly here. It's hard to know what to believe. I'm sure most of it is just kind of general nonsense, of course. But yeah, I still am a bit surprised that they haven't gotten to anything yet. You know what I mean? Like, this has been going on for a long time. We know that both sides are motivated to get this done. So as Stephen Holder reported, I think it was Sunday evening, it seems likely at this point that at least one of the tags is going to get used. So at this point, you've got the transition tag, which is the average of the top 10 salaries of that position, and then the non-exclusive franchise tag, which is the average of the top 5. So I'm going to turn this to you real quick. Like, which one would you use on either? Not who's better, who's more valuable, but like genuinely how an NFL team would operate, because I kind of knowing the situation with these two guys, I kind of feel as if they're going to use either or both, Jones would be more likely for the transition and Pierce more likely for franchise. Because you and I, how many times did you and I hear from people, whether other media members covering other teams or whatever, seeming like they had a chance with Alec Pierce, and we're like, no, you don't. Like, everybody, all 31 other teams seem to want a piece of Alec Pierce.
Yeah, it would really just come down to who they can get an extension done with first, right? Because you don't want it to be both of them are unsigned going into 4 o'clock tomorrow, and you have to make a choice in that regard. I think they would franchise Pierce in that instance, and then they would probably just cave to Daniel Jones's demands and make sure that he's under contract. But here's kind of my read on the overall situation right now. The Colts know for a fact that they're not losing Alec Pierce this offseason, either through franchise tag or signing him to an extension. So I don't think they've had many conversations with him recently. So I think there has been this full court press to get Daniel Jones's deal done. And with that comes the hiccups of, oh, we're $10 million apart in guaranteed money. Oh, we're 1 year apart in term on the contract. So you're in these like final hurdles where both sides are like, oh, nothing's close, but we're still having the conversations, all very normal when it comes to contract talks. I've heard it through dozens of players over the years. These exact things happen. And now we're at the point where both sides are turning to the media to do some of their negotiating for them. On one side, you have a lot of the reports coming out that, oh, the Colts aren't close to what Daniel Jones wants. in terms of term. And he's asking for more than what they expected, and it's 50-50 at best if they're going to get a deal done. And then on the other end, you have the dangling of the transition tag from the Colts side, which is basically the Colts responding by saying, look, if you're not going to play ball with us here, you can play 1 year at $37 million unless you can get a better deal than that on the open market, which I'm not sure there's going to be many teams that would go much higher than that. So it's just normal haggling on both sides. They know the deadline's coming close. Push for as best as you can before the deadline, and then get something done before it all has to go down. And I fully expect that if, say that both of these sides are playing such hardball coming tomorrow by early afternoon, the Colts will pivot really hard and knock out that long-term deal with Alec Pierce so they can use the transition tag on Daniel Jones. They're going to use the tag on one of these two guys. I think ideally they want to get Jones locked up before 4 p.m. tomorrow so they can franchise Pierce and use that franchise window to negotiate a little bit longer with Pierce. That way, neither of them are going to get close to the market. But I think if it comes down to it, they will probably cave to Alec Pierce a little bit and transition tag Daniel Jones if his representation wants to play a bit of hardball. But this is all standard negotiating, guys. I heard exact same things about Baker Mayfield 2 years ago at that NFL Combine. I spoke to someone who was very close to those negotiations, is what I should say, who said, yeah, we're not close. We think he might hit free agency if we can't come to something. And then 2 days later, there was an extension announced. So it's really just what happens in these negotiations. I think ultimately they will get this done. Both sides are motivated, like you said, Jake, but there's going to be this push for as much money, either for the Colts to save more money or for Jones's agents to make more money before that deadline hits at 4 p.m. tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm very, very confident they both get done. And I would think ultimately multi-year deals are struck with both of them. That's not to say a tag isn't used initially on at least one of them. But there's some big factors at play here. Number one, the wallet's open this year. My understanding is this offseason, they are treating it from all levels of the team like this is a very competitive offseason. So the money should be there. And then number two, Daniel Jones and Alec Pierce I'm not going to call them a package deal, but their presence in the building together is very important to each of them. You know, we've seen Alec Pierce essentially rendered almost useless by other quarterbacks before. And then with Daniel Jones, Alec Pierce helped unlock an area of his game this year that really was never a steady presence in New York, you know, or at any point before in his pro career, pushing the ball downfield. So Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones want each other in Indy. They want to be in Indy, and the Colts are willing to use the money. So once everyone gets out of their own ways and just comes to a common ground, it's going to get done. Eventually, it will get done. But I just think the big question mark is, do they keep playing this game to where they have to use a tag first by tomorrow? They don't want either of these guys to get to the market, so I'm going to say at least one tag's getting used tomorrow.
Yeah, and if we just look at Chris Ballard's history, right? We always say deadline spur action. Maybe the only time they took something a little bit past the deadline was like the Jonathan Taylor debacle with Taylor requesting a trade back before that season, how that leaked into the season a little bit. But for the most part, this stuff gets done before it hits the deadline. We look at Michael Pittman Jr.'s contract when they got the franchise tag on him and negotiated that long-term deal pretty quickly. We look at Bernhard Ryman's contract this last summer. They got that done early August, so they didn't have to worry about it into the season. So they usually are good at getting this stuff done before big deadlines come up or big landmarks get happening. But there's going to always be haggling up until that point, especially when it comes to how you want to manage an offseason. So this is all standard procedure. There's going to be a lot of speculation. But ultimately, I'd be very, very surprised if either one of these guys is not a member of the Colts next year. All I can really say for sure right now, though, is Jake and I are going to be up since early morning tomorrow, and we're going to be ready to go for any news that happens, because regardless, there's going to be a lot of news tomorrow with the Indianapolis Colts, whether there's a long-term deal worked out or they're placing a tag on one of these two guys. So tomorrow will be a big day here on Locked On Colts, and you guys already know what's coming when it comes to that content tomorrow.
Yeah, without question. All right, guys, so let's go ahead and shift focus to the defensive side of the ball here in just a moment. Because as much as juicy as the offensive side of the ball is, when you're reading between the lines, Zach and I, we saw some eyebrow-raising things when it comes to the defense when we talked to Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen this week. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want. Rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your vibe. You can mix spreads, totals, and player props to match how you see your slate playing out. Then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe, go bold. Ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game.
Workplace chaos, deadlines are stacking up, and the inbox is overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you are looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping that the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that just says it all. In the minute that I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing those candidates who check all those boxes. Less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back to the show, Locked On Colts Everydayers. Free agency is here, and so are we. So get 1 month free of the Everydayer Club with code FREEAGENCY, no spaces, now through March 15th. Go ad-free and keep this conversation going on Discord. Join the club at LockedOnColts.supercast.com to join or even gift a subscription. We are back talking about this Colts defense heading into, again, tomorrow's deadline. And while we don't expect anyone on defense to get tagged, Jake, there are still some notable additions and subtractions coming for the Colts this offseason. And I think the most notable thing that we heard from Chris Ballard this weekend, he had multiple media appearances. He did his presser at the Combine. He went on the show with James Boyd and Kevin Bowen on their radio show this week. And he also did an interview with Rich Eisen on NFL Network. So a lot of Chris Ballard talking this week. And I think the most important thing for us as our breaking news podcast and as our reaction podcast goes is how non-committal he was to Zaire Franklin, a player who's under contract going into next season.
For 2 years.
Yeah, so it's not like this is just like, oh, we'll see if we bring back Kwity Paye, or Kwity Paye did a lot of good things for us, or, you know, stuff like that. When Kwity Paye is a free agent, Zaire Franklin like is under contract, and him being like, we'll see what happens with him. We have some conversations coming up. I think that was very, very telling.
Yeah, without question, because again, he's under contract for 2 years. Chris could have just said, I don't know what you're talking about. This guy is under contract for, like, there's no issues. And he's not making an ungodly amount of money. Like, they'll make money if they cut him, but he's not making like the Pittman $29 million. You know what I mean? So the fact that Ballard even willingly acknowledged that Franklin is like a potential, his status is shaky with the team, I agree. I think that was totally telling, especially when you mix in the fact how much they've been telling us that front seven needs work. That's the younger, faster thing in particular that they're talking about. I don't think they're concerned with their secondary. I think, you know, if the right piece comes along that they want to add, sure. But by and large, I think their goal this offseason is to totally rejuvenate that. And I don't know if they outright don't want him as part of the future plans, like if he's just past his prime, or if they just want it to be cheaper. But they certainly made it sound like they're going to press the issue to at least like look to get cheaper with that. Because if I remember correctly, when he was talking about Zaire, he talked about like his pride, and there's some push and shove there with both of them. So it's maybe just more of a discussion about getting cheaper with the contract rather than an outright cut or trade. But yeah, I thought it was very telling that Ballard even acknowledged that was the situation to begin with.
Yeah, no, it felt similar to how they talked about the Braden Smith situation last
Mhm.
offseason. Now, very different situations, but Braden Smith, it was ultimately a pay cut. I'd be very shocked if Zaire Franklin agreed to a pay cut to come back. I think
I
he would
agree.
rather move on, as would most players in that situation. So we shall see what happens there. Another big notable news item from Chris Ballard this week is just continued emphasis on that front seven, like you mentioned, Jake, getting younger and faster there. I think a lot of this draft is going to be devoted to the front seven. I think a lot of this free agency is going to be devoted to the front seven, especially I think they're going to make one big swing in that area of their defense, probably on the edge in free agency. So we're going to see a very different front seven, like you mentioned, Jake.
Yeah, and Chris, again, another thing he acknowledged is that he does think they're going to be players for some of the more prominent names in free agency, which to me, like all of the context around the quote seemed like a Trey Hendrickson question from what I think it was intended to be, but not just him. Like they're not going to have some big bullseye in Trey Hendrickson, and if they strike out, just be done with it. Like I think I'm sure they have their list of names of guys they would like to look at. And some of those guys are going to be significant names, I'm sure. So, like I had mentioned, the purse, the wallet, the money is supposed to be flowing this offseason. So Ballard acknowledged as much, essentially. And I think one way they're going to kind of be able to afford some of that stuff is with a couple of guys that we think are probably going to be walking, Nick Cross and Kwity Paye. Now, he didn't outright say that Nick Cross is going to be going, but essentially it sounds like they're going to have a contract figure and they're going to let him test the market. If you find a great opportunity, great. If we're able to afford you, we'd love to have you back. But essentially he described it as, we have a piece of the pie. Here's, a size of the slice we can offer you. If you can find a bigger slice elsewhere, then no hard feelings.
Yeah, it's kind of like the situation with Will Fries last year. Like they made Will Fries a competitive offer. The Vikings made a more competitive offer. And ultimately they let that go on. And the Colts had to turn to their contingency plan, which I think is likely what's going to happen with Nick Cross this offseason. We'll see. This has happened in the past as well, where the Colts have put their offer out there and the player ultimately came back. So all best case scenario, Nick Cross coming back. Kwity Paye, it didn't sound very similar to that, though. Kwity Paye, it very much felt like we're talking in past tense with what Kwity did for us the last 5 years. We're grateful for how he played, and he played good football for us these last couple years. It wasn't really much of a we're going to make an offer, though. It was very much just a reflective, he played some good football in there at times, but I see the Colts moving on from Kwity Paye almost without a doubt this offseason.
Yeah, that verbiage, you got to learn the Chris Ballard verbiage this time of year, because I remember within the last couple of years, there is, if he's essentially thanking you for your service, then it's done, like he did with Gardner Minshew. If he says, we would like to have him back, we'll see how it goes, yada, 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 kind of like they did with Nick Cross, then they'll legitimately try, but they'll let that player test the market. With Kwity, I think it's probably done there.
Yeah, I don't even think they're really going to have much of an offer on him, but we'll see. We'll see. One last notable thing here, and this is more so from you and other media members talking with Ballard a little bit after the presser that he did. Just continued love for Hunter Wohler. And I think, how we mentioned with Will Fries leaving last offseason, their contingency plan was Mac Gonsalves to start at right guard, and that ended up working for them. I get the feeling the contingency plan at strong safety is Hunter Wohler coming back and potentially starting there because they're not mincing their words when it comes to how much they like Wohler, which, again, to me, it's a little crazy. Why'd you take him in round 7 then if you like him that much? You couldn't have taken him in round 4, round 5 if you liked him so much. But regardless, he's a member of the team and they seem to be very high on him. So I hope their contingency plan is a little bit better than Hunter Wohler, but they've talked about him quite a bit so far. And I'm sure you'll learn even more when you get down to the owners meetings and stuff later this offseason, Jake.
Yeah, for sure. Like Wooler is now the guy that Ballard finds a way to mention him at every opportunity that he gets to talk. My main concern was like, again, the last time we saw him in the locker room on locker cleanout day, like he still didn't seem to be 100% because he had a boot on and he had that injury, I believe, in August. So I think it was Shane I asked. I was like, hey, are you guys expecting Hunter to be back for like the offseason program and training camp and everything? And that does sound like the goal. Like they expect Wooler to be able to participate in some form or fashion this offseason, which is just one part of like the defensive issues injury-wise they dealt with. They do think DeForest Buckner is going to be back by training camp. Ballard seems a little optimistic. It could happen even sooner, just given who DeForest Buckner is, but the team does expect him back by camp. And then Mooney Ward, this was another kind of interesting one, the way Chris Ballard spoke about it. They said Mooney wants to come back and play, but I never heard in all the times that Chris was talking, and we'd like to, and we're going to have him back. We can't wait to get him with Sauce. He wants to play, and we can't wait to see him out there. Like, there was never that follow-up part to the he wants to play. So other than we want to do right by the player. So I'm interested to see what that means. Like, Ward wants to come back and play. Is that for the Colts? Because I'm not 100% convinced at this point. Because, I mean, as much as that decision on retirement and everything was Mooney Ward's, the Colts have, a decision of their own to make because they know about the concussions last year. It happened under their watch. He was on IR twice. So they have a decision to make whether they want that player to risk himself for their team.
Yeah, so we'll ultimately see where the Colts go in that direction. But to close out today's show, we have some other miscellaneous news updates, some potential ways to gain cap and draft picks, and other news and notes with this Indianapolis Colts team.
We live in a world where we can stream anything, order food in minutes, and carry supercomputers in our pockets, and somehow buying tickets to a live game still feels complicated. Hidden fees, jumping prices, endless steps, there has to be a better way. But that's why we use the Gametime app. It gives fans the advantage and makes getting tickets simple, whether it's NFL games, NBA, concerts, comedy, whatever you're into. I recently jumped onto the app to check out some tickets for an upcoming game, and honestly just took me minutes. You could see panoramic views from every seat before you buy. The price that you see includes all fees, so there's no shockers at checkout. Plus, you can even spot the zone deals where you pick the section, Gametime picks the seats for extra savings. Just 2 taps and you have great seats locked in. Fast, easy, done. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Gametime today. All right, welcome back, everybody. Zach and I are just spilling on what we think, what we heard, what we know about the Colts coming out of the scouting combine, which is just, it's everyone's big week-long gossip fest. Everyone in the NFL is together, media, agents, team personnel alike. And the best thing to do is chit-chat, essentially. So we talked about kind of what's going on with the offensive side of the ball, defense as well. Now we've got some other kind of miscellaneous things. So we would be remiss not to mention, of course, that Anthony Richardson is now officially on the trade block. We did a whole show on it the other day. We covered it on the squad show. But basically, since that news dropped, I haven't really heard anything new. I think there's at least a few suitors out there from my understanding. But I don't think the Colts really have a firm deadline on this yet. I do imagine they'd want to get it done before the draft. I'm interested to see how much free agency plays into it with teams acquiring other quarterbacks and everything. Because when guys are on the trade block, you kind of put them in the free agent market as well. It's just a different avenue of acquiring them.
Yeah, I think he might be a consolation prize for whatever team misses out on Malik Willis as their starting quarterback this offseason. I've seen a lot of people speculate about like winning teams trading for him, the Green Bay Packers, Los Angeles Rams, and these places where you'd have to sit. I still think we're sleeping too much on the teams that just don't know what the heck their starting quarterback situation looks like with a bad quarterback draft and a bad free agency coming up when it comes to quarterbacks. So I still circle the Cleveland Browns and Arizona Cardinals as my two big ones. Those are two teams that at the worst need another quarterback into their competitions to see who can win. I think those are the teams I'd be circling still when it comes to a Richardson trade, especially because I think each team has quite a few day 3 draft picks as well. So I think those are ultimately the two teams. But speaking of adding more draft picks or adding more cap space for the Colts, we talked about in the first segment, Jake, that we expect Pierce and we expect Jones to some degree to get locked up with the Colts here soon. They're going to need more cap space. And we talked about this all offseason. Moving Richardson opens up about 5. Moving Zaire Franklin, like we mentioned in segment 2, opens up around 5 as well for this year. But the big question is still Michael Pittman Jr. It felt like Ballard was trying to throw a lot of water on that in his presser, being like, anyone who's speculating that he's not going to be here is purely speculating. But the fact of the matter is they have to do something with that contract. And if they can't come to an agreement on a restructure or, I don't think he's going to give money back to the organization at this point. There's no reason for him to do that. So whether it's a restructure or an extension, if they can't come to an agreement on that, then he's going to be traded or cut because he just can't play at that $29 million contract. And everyone involved knows that. So that's going to be a big way to add cap space, maybe add picks if they trade him. But ultimately, when they do move Anthony Richardson at some point, that'll be another way to add more draft picks. Ballard said they want to get more than the 7 that they're already currently projected to have. And I think moving Richardson, a trade back in round 2, or even moving Pittman could be a way to open up more draft picks for this team.
Yeah, the way I see this ending with each, certainly for Richardson, is trade. He's on the trade block. He's asked for a trade. But with Pittman, I still think they find a way to get it done with a restructure. When I asked Ballard on Tuesday, I said, because he dropped the line you said where it's speculating for him to not be here. I followed up with, is it realistic for him to play that figure given you have to pay Alec Pierce damn near the same amount per year if you're going to land him? And he immediately started talking about Mike Bloom, their cap specialist. So that tells you all you need to know right there. Zaire Franklin is another guy that fits into that as well as a way to get further cap space and maybe draft capital. But some other news and notes here. Now, this is a lot more up Zach and I's alley. What we were even there for the Combine for primarily was to get an eye on some of these draft picks. So the Colts, obviously, every team pretty much meets with everyone, whether that's the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine, the Combine, all of it. But formal interviews can be interesting. Whether or not it's the player or you just see trends in position groups that they are getting these formal interviews with, I think is probably a little more valuable. But here's some that we know of so far. Now, some of these we heard from the players directly themselves that they had formals with the Colts, even though neither of us did you meet with people?
We're not at all.
Yeah, sometimes it comes up organically. And then also Destin Adams has a piece over at A to Z where he's kind of compiling them as well. But some that I have heard of, offensive tackle Travis Burke from Memphis and Georgia guard Keelan Rutledge.
Georgia Tech.
I said Georgia, yes. My bad. Georgia Tech, Keelan Rutledge. A couple linebackers, Zach Sky, Josiah Trotter from Missouri, and then Jayshon Barham from Michigan. And then safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren from Toledo and Kamari Ramsey from USC. I got it that time, bud.
What I was staring at you for there.
Yeah. Now McNeil-Warren, his stock is interesting to me now because he didn't disappoint at the Combine, but he didn't blow the roof off the place either. Some thought perhaps he could threaten a Nick Emmanwori kind of workout, but Dylan Thieneman did. And we already know Caleb Downs is locked in at the top 10. So not a lot of safeties usually go. So if you consider Caleb Downs and Dylan Thieneman pretty much locks for the first round, that may be the only 2 safeties there. Now, I'm sure there's teams that are going to really like McNeil-Warren, but I do think the possibility of him being there at 47 for the Colts is a little greater than I did this time last week. Because, of course, if he goes and runs 4.35 and jumps 42 and has an 11.5 broad, then no one's going to let him leave the first round. especially with his ball skills as well. But yeah, guys like McNeil Warren, I think it's a little more of a possibility now. I do like to hear Josiah Trotter was a formal. But the two offensive linemen that I heard from, I asked them about their meeting specifically with Tony Sperano Jr., and it just echoes. It's like the same answer I've heard from any other O-line prospect, either before or after a draft, after they've come to the Colts. They just love talking ball with Sperano. Like he just seems to get them hook, line, and sinker. He connects with players just so well.
Yeah, the only one I want to add at the end here is I'm really hoping Keelan Rutledge is there in round 4 or so, because that's probably the earliest I would want the Colts to take a guard in this draft. And I love his game. I think he's a fun player. He had I just enjoyed talking to him as well at the Combine. Some of my favorite film as a guard in this class. So, I think there is a way that he could fall to round 4, like in that early-ish round 4 range, like Bortolini did a couple years ago. I think he would be awesome for the Colts, and I would love him as competition or someone that can push Matt Gonsalves and be a quality backup. So I never want to hope for a player to lose money, but if anyone, I'm hoping for Rutledge to lose some money and drop from like a round 3 to a round 4 and be in that Colts range, because I'm a big fan of his game. But that is all we have for today, guys. Thanks again.
Add the interesting one real quick.
Oh, sorry. I forgot you did have one more. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, no. So now this one's from Reggie Wayne. So KC Concepcion, Reggie tweeted something so there's a big whole thing about Concepcion. He does have a speech impediment, and it drew some eyes and ears at the Combine, like big deal. But because people are awful, he did get proper crap for it. And then he released a statement, and then Reggie Wayne quote tweeted it and said, like, I had a wonderful time meeting with this kid at the Combine, so on and so forth. So Reggie Wayne did meet with Concepcion, and I don't think that position coaches normally meet with guys during informal meetings. So I can't slap the formal tag on it, but that's kind of what it sounds like.
Yeah, he's a fascinating prospect. And yeah, there were people giving him too much crap for that presser. I happened to walk by it a couple of times. I wasn't too interested in talking to him just because I think he's going to go before the Colts' first pick. So that's the only reason I didn't talk to him. But yeah, it's not like he was like not giving effort up there or anything like that. Like, he was trying his best. It's just tough to overcome that stuff,
Yeah, no, he was talking right behind me at the time, and like I noticed it, but I pretty immediately figured, I was like, yeah, like he must have a tough time with this. Like,
yeah,
there's nothing bad he was doing. It's like some people have speech impediments, no big deal.
Yeah, so we'll see if he ends up being there by 47 and Reggie starts pounding the table for him. But that is all we have for today. Officially what we have for today, before Jake comes in with more. Yeah, for now. If there's any breaking news later tonight, though, we will jump on for you guys tonight. If not, though, we'll see you guys back here tomorrow afternoon. So thanks again for tuning in to Locked On Colts. Make sure to subscribe to our show so you get all the latest episodes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2, all on socials. And if you never miss an episode, then remember, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Colts audio ad-free, plus members only Discord access, and much more. Remember to use that code free agency with no space in between for a great deal while free agency is kicking off, and head to lockedoncolts.supercast.com to join the ranks, or follow the link in our show notes right now. Thanks again, and we'll be back here either tomorrow afternoon or the next time that some breaking news drops.